Now, Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, host of the Kyle Seraphin Podcast. Sir, good to have you back with us.
How's it going, Vince?
It's amazing, isn't it? So here's an agency that whose mission has been completely subverted into attacking President Trump and the people who support him. And now there's a lot of panic going on inside of FBI headquarters.
Yeah, selfishly, I mean, I look at my own story, and I don't remember Andy McCabe worrying about me or any of my buddies who came forward to Congress and said, hey, we have these good faith allegations, and they're not partisan, and they literally have nothing to do about politics. They simply have to do with religious liberties and the fact that we think the First Amendment means something, that the Fourth Amendment should still stand, and the agency should respect the Bill of Rights, and maybe you should do your job the way that you signed up to. That was good enough to get us canceled, tossed out of the agency, but now there are people that are panicking. This is a problem that is the FBI's own making, and it lands squarely on FBI management. It should land right there, but they roped everybody in. I'm going to kind of throw something out there that will be it's indicative of when this problem started. Obviously, it happened right after January 6th to the folks that did January 6th cases. But the FBI started a program that I've never seen before. They began redacting the names of the agents and other DOJ personnel that were involved in all the legal process that was out in the public. And so they kind of told them that they were ashamed of doing what they were doing. You know, Vince, they don't do that for people that do cartel cases every day, that have legitimate threats on their life from transnational organized crime, from folks that are working on gangs that are local and or national. You don't take your name off the search warrant, off the criminal complaints. You don't take them off any of the work that goes on because you're proud of the work you're doing. You stand up, and obviously if the agency has to protect you or move you or, you know, relocate your family or put a protective detail on you, they do that. They did something different for J6 cases, and I think it actually indicates right off the bat they knew that this was a shameful action, but all the things that have been hidden, they're starting to get revealed. I've got some more info that's been kind of going on the way that the Bureau has been trying to obfuscate the orders and the requests for this information too, which I'll share with you today.
Okay, good. Let me just concentrate on what you just said, though, which is that the FBI and the Biden administration broadly, they treated January 6 defendants as more dangerous than members of transnational cartels?
Well, that's me implying that. But what they did is they hid the names of the people that were involved in those cases.
Yes.
I can't understand why you would want to redact somebody unless you thought there was a security risk. And they've actually said that over and over again, you know, out of concerns for the security of the agents. And that's led to some of the other things that you and I have talked about on your program. We've come on here and we've talked about how agents are not wanting to identify themselves when they go and they do a standard knock and talk. They don't want to show their credentials, which are actually issued to them so they can identify themselves to the members of the public that says, hey, I'm an FBI agent, and here is the thing that was given to me by the director of the FBI, which identifies me as such. They don't want to show that anymore. And if you don't want to show who you are, it tells me you're doing some dark deeds. And I've never felt that way. I didn't mind leaving a business card. None of my colleagues, by the way, who are my buddies that are still working in the agency, have any fear for their jobs, nor do they fear answering for any of the work they did, because if you did it the right way and you went after and only pursued cases that were within line with the FBI's mission, there's nothing to worry about.
Yes.
If you actually pursued an assault on a federal officer, which is a regular thing the FBI does at the border every single day, whether it be in McAllen or Laredo or El Paso or Sierra Vista or San Diego, you know, any of the places that you could work all the way across the border, they do these things every single day. If you were pursuing only those from January 6th, nobody would be embarrassed about that. You'd say a cop got hit and we investigated and we either pressed or charges, we indicted or we didn't. And those happen all the time. They get declined for various reasons. Instead, what they did is they went after misdemeanor cases, and they did a ton of them. And so to me, that shows that they knew right off the bat that they bit off more than they could chew, and they were pursuing a political agenda that was embarrassing, and a lot of Americans wouldn't be on board with it. They're just waiting for that other shoe to drop.
My sense, Kyle Seraphin, is that the political actors within the FBI who were directing all of this, they had convinced themselves that it would work, that they would debilitate President Trump and his support and prevent him from ever returning to the Oval Office. They didn't anticipate that this would happen, that President Trump would actually win a clear mandate and then return to the Oval Office where he now has authority over this agency again.
It's just such short-sighted nonsense. I mean, we're always 4 or 8 years away from a turn in this country, and the American people are a fickle lot in so much as they don't like political parties as much as they like consistency, and they like rule of law, and they like their kids being able to live in a country that they can look in the eye and say, yeah, this is a respectable place and things are going the right way. And if you step off the path too far from the left or the right, you get corrected. It's happened through all of American history, certainly in my life, but for, at least the last 100 years or so.
Yes.
Nobody gets a monopoly on power. That's just not how it works. and they were acting like it was never going to be accountable. And it was just the worst decision they could have done.
How impressive is it to you that President Trump was able to overcome the full weight of the Justice Department directed at him?
I think it has to do with what God has in store for this country. And I wasn't sure that's where we were going. Like, we could have gone the Sodom and Gomorrah route really quickly as well. And I think some of us saw that as a real possibility, that we were going to be, relegated to the dustbin of history because this country was off the rails. And quite clearly, when you have a Justice Department that is now shielding and redacting the names of people that are going after misdemeanor prosecutions, there's a shameful action underway. And a lot of Americans said that. I think that's why people crossed the aisle that said, maybe I don't like Donald Trump that much. But what they're doing on the other side is also not right. And I don't want to live in a country that does that. I'm going to vote for mean tweets and cheaper gas instead of demonizing a guy who got shot in the head.
Yeah.
And nobody seemed to think that was a really big game changer. I mean, we talked about it on your program as well. We were a millimeter or two away from the world changing dramatically in July of last year. And thank God it didn't. And like I said, I think that we've seen this sort of guiding instinct. I didn't think we were going to get the election we got in November. And I'm very grateful we did. And I have to imagine the amount of you can even tell the way that Donald Trump is reacting right now. He's more at peace.
Yes.
He's calm. He's focused. That anxiety of having the weight of the government fighting you, it's a real thing. I felt it in a smaller way myself, and it's debilitating. I mean, it'll cause GI issues. It causes you not to sleep. It causes you to be snappy with your spouse and your kids. And you're just seeing a different Donald Trump right now.
Yeah. He's
been let off the chain. And honestly, thank God for that, because it needs to happen right now.
Yes. And he was able to overcome these attacks, which I think has given him a tremendous sense of self-confidence, too. You mentioned a moment ago, Kyle Seraphin, that you also wanted to talk a little bit, I believe, about the efforts within the FBI to conceal records.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things that are going on. First of all, we all know about the fork email that went out to opm.gov/fork. They gave an opportunity for people to basically self-assess that they were not valuable federal employees, that they were the kind of people that got to stay home when there was a shutdown. And so there's this big resistance to that. And how do we subvert that? There was also a requirement to return home. Literally on Inauguration Day, Trump signed an executive order saying that all the federal employees must cease working at home and go into the office. And the FBI is not doing that right now. What they've determined is that what Trump's EO meant was remote work. And what they're doing is telework, which sounds like the same thing to you and I because we're regular people. But in the government, they have specific words that mean specific things. Remote work means that you work from your home and you don't live in the area where your office is. And telework means that you live in the area, but you're working at home. So all the people that live outside of D.C. and don't want to commute into D.C. are still allowed to work from home at the FBI. They've determined that through their attorneys because they are just doing this little subversion. And the second thing is this request for all the names of the J6 case participants and case managers. Now, again, I have a nuanced view. Nobody asked me what my view is, but I don't think that people who did legitimate and righteous cases should be punished for doing what the FBI always does, which is evaluate assault on federal officers, destruction of federal property, and so on. Those are all reasonable things to do as a case agent. But that requested set of 5,000 names that we just saw reported on CNN and others saying that they went over to the Justice Department, some of the FBI field offices have taken it upon themselves to not give names. They gave what are called EINs, or employee ID numbers. Now, there's a one-to-one correlation between the name and the number, and of course, they all exist in the DOJ's global directory. So anybody who works for DOJ could look up an EIN and find out the name associated with it. But it's just one more step of obstructionism that's going on. I was told it happened in Boston, and it was told it happened in Portland as well. I'm sure there were other special agents in charge that decided on their own, like sort of a sua sponte move, that they were going to protect their agents by hiding their names.
Yes.
But this is a lawful order. And if they ask you for names, you got to give them names. It's not really that complicated.
So you summarized it really well, but the CNN report that Kyle Seraphin is referring to says today that the FBI has turned over records of 5,000 employees who worked on January 6 cases to the Justice Department. And one of the things that strikes me as stunning is that the FBI has 38,000 total employees. That's among agents and all the other employees who work for the FBI. 38,000 total. 5,000 of those people were working on January 6 cases. 5,000. Kyle Seraphin, talk about a tremendous waste of time, resources, and lost opportunities to go after real crimes that are really damaging the country.
So my buddy Phil was an agent at the Washington field office just like I was. He had 15 years in. He's also a CPA, and so he does accounting work. And so he looked at this. He was a white-collar investigator for the Bureau. So he just did the quick math on it, and he said, the FBI costs $11 billion a year. You had 4 years of agents working on this at roughly $290,000 per person if you were to just divide the cost of the FBI against the number of employees. Obviously, that's not what they get paid, but assume just kind of broadly speaking.
Right.
It means that they spent $6 billion on January 6 cases for essentially a couple hundred people that were involved in assault on federal officer cases and like some destruction of property. There was not any real, like all of the other things were sort of concocted by the government. And there's a reason why Donald Trump went through and pardoned everybody in a blanket pardon, because it was so over the top on the DOJ side that I don't think he had the opportunity to say, well, we can suss out that these were better cases and these were not. What you saw is the government did wrong. They overstepped the boundaries. They pursued things they would have never done before. And, if you just did that math on it, that's kind of rough math. It's probably to the tune of something like $6 billion worth of waste. Now, every FBI case is assigned a budget, fictional budget of $100,000 for the case, but rarely do small, incidental, transactional business like an assault on federal officer cases cost more than a couple hours. You go out there and get a couple interviews. You go and you get the photographic or the video evidence of it. You collect something if there's something the officer has. And then they indict or they don't. And they, a lot of times it's like somebody got pushed over and they knocked over their sunglasses and there was no injury. And they don't even pursue it. It's a regular thing that these things get declined. To imagine the number of hours that were spent on J6 cases and what's the opportunity cost, Vince? Like, what were we not pursuing as a country because we had 1 in 7 FBI employees dealing with J6 nonsense?
We unfortunately found out the answer to that question the really rough way. There was a lot of problems. One other piece here that I want to hit with you, Kyle Seraphin. FBI agents are apparently a part of now a class action lawsuit against the United States Department of Justice trying to block them from gaining access to all of this information. Now, of course, the news this afternoon is that the DOJ now is in control of a list of some 5,000 FBI employees who were involved in going after President Trump supporters. What do you make of this class action lawsuit against the federal government by federal agents?
I think it's a Crimea River situation. We have a mass action right now against the COVID mandates that are still a problem for people who lost their jobs, were discriminated against, who lost promotions, all kinds of different levels of shenanigans that were perpetrated against actual FBI employees that were trying to do their job and had a religious right to be accommodated. And that didn't get done yet. We're still dealing with that. We haven't seen the end of it. So for the fact that they're crying about their actual government records being turned over to the government agency that is the parent organization, DOJ is in charge of the FBI. It rolls up in the org chart. It's really, really clear how it works. What it tells you, though, is this kind of broader thing that you're hearing Democrats talk about on the floor, in Congress. You're hearing the senators talk about this, that the people that work inside the executive branch are not accountable to the president. They somehow answer to the American people in this like fictional sense. And apparently they need to go back and read their Constitution, because when we talk about the government most broadly, we're almost always talking about executive agencies, and they all answer at the end of the day to the president of the United States, who changed, January 20th. So these people don't want to get with the programs. I think they've been really used to being able to resist. They had a pretty good run 2017 through 2021 under the original Donald Trump era. And I think Donald Trump sort of accommodated and played nice with a lot of people that, you kind of learn the ropes. You understand what it looks like. I also think we're going to look back and see that the 4 years of Joe Biden, as atrocious as they were for civil liberties, as atrocious as they were for government overreach, they're going to end up being a blessing. Like so many things in the world, it gave us an opportunity to take a pause, to see the differential between Trump 1.0 and 2.0.
Yep.
And this second round, I think the first, 10 or 12 days of it have already been mind-blowing for the speed of government. I mean, it's too fast for them to handle. It's the speed of business. It's the speed of the news cycle, which is amazing for those of us watching it. And I think it's leaving the government employees like kind of on their back foot going, how the heck did we get here?
I agree with you. I agree. Yeah, no, this could not have happened if President Trump was simply reelected the first go-around. It had to take this series of events. Once again, a reminder to me that God's plan is not my plan, but it's a lot better than mine. That's for sure. Hey, Kyle Seraphin, thank you. Always good to talk to you, sir.